Welcome to Get Started in Calligraphy. My name is Dee, and today we're going to learn floral, watercolor, wreath, and simple calligraphy. Calligraphy is the art of beautiful handwriting. It's a good skill to have if you want to create pieces for yourself and for your loved ones. So, let's go! To start, let me show you the materials for this activity. First, we need watercolor paper. Any size will do, any brand will do. I always say start with what you're comfortable with. For the paper weight, I would really suggest you start at around 200 or 300 GSM. And of course, since we're going to be painting with watercolor, we need watercolors. Watercolor can come in palettes or tubes. Use whatever is accessible for you. And you don't need this many colors. You can start with 12, with 3. It's a wonder what you can do with very limited palette. And of course, for the brush calligraphy part, we're going to be using brush pens. I have my 3 brush pens with me. You can use whatever brush pens, whatever brush size. As long as the tip is brush and not chiseled or pointy, then you're good to go. And of course, your watercolor brushes, any size will do, and some tissue and water. To start painting our floral wreath, we start with our star flower. So with your wet brush, pick a center color that you would like. So for me, I pick this gorgeous opera pink. And then imagine you have a circle no bigger than a 10-cent coin. And then you fill that up with little dots. Why dots and not fill up the whole circle? You want to see a little bit of that white space or the whiteness of the paper to actually come out. Afterwards, wash your brush. You pick a second color. Here, I'm picking a golden yellow or my petal. So, with your center still wet and your brush wet, touch the outer circle and then pull out the paint. Try to leave some empty white space in the middle. The part that you paint is as important as the part that you don't paint. This little bits of whiteness actually adds lightness and softness in your work. So you don't want your work to be too heavy on the eye. And you have to be kind to yourself if you're frustrated that what's happening on paper is not matching what you have in your mind. You will be surprised how watercolor looks or how your art looks once the watercolor dries. There's no pattern when you're painting. It's not like 3 petals on the left, 2 petals on the right. You just have to adjust on what is in front of you. If your paint is a bit thick, you soften it up with water like what I'm doing here. So with loose floral painting, you're not so focused on every detail of the flower. You just want to capture the essence and the movement and the shape of what you are painting. To add a bit of contrast, I'm just gonna add the same color of golden yellow but a slightly darker tone, less water, and more paint on my brush. So we're gonna repeat this exact process, slightly smaller, and also a different color. See? Exact same technique, but a totally different looking flower. Now that we have our flowers, it's time to put our leaves. I always start with branch, and I'm gonna pick a brown. If you don't have brown, you can just use green, same color as your leaves. It's perfectly fine. I'm gonna start with my branch, curving it slowly, as if there's a circle here on your paper. With your main branch, you're branching it out into smaller nodes. And while that branch is still wet, wash your brush, get your favorite green, point your brush, just the tip of the brush, and then press down. Let's say you want to make it thicker, a more chunkier leaves, you do the same thing on the other side. And then as you end on the same point as the first half. Don't forget to add a leaf on the very tip of your branch. Now, we're gonna add little accents or what we call fillers. So my favorite go-to filler are berries because they're super easy to make. So what I do is you pick a happy color, and maybe for here, I would want something a little bit purplish. You just make little random circles of different size. Leave a little bit of space. Where to insert them, I always say, look for awkward white spaces. You know those spaces, it's like, I don't know what's wrong with you. Fill it with berries, fill it with leaves. If you're happy with that, you can leave it at that. Or if you want, you can mix up colors. So here, I got beautiful teal blue. And then I'm just gonna put it on top, overlapping a little bit of that purplish berry that I put earlier. I still see a little bit of white spaces on my branch. If you're happy with that, you can leave it. Or if you want, you can make it a little bit more fuller. And I'm gonna use the gold paint that I mentioned earlier. So gold is really nice because when you move your paper on the side, once the paint dries, it adds this glitter and it shimmers. So it's a really beautiful surprise. And lastly, you can either close this with continuing your branch or filling it up with gold. So we're gonna do both. To finish this up, I'm just gonna get my green and I'm gonna add maybe 2 or 3 leaves. And now we're gonna finish our wreath with some gold. You just connect the branch to these little bits of green that you added in the middle. Once everything is dry, it's time for our brush calligraphy. So I'm using a magenta colored pen and I'm gonna write the word bloom with grace. So again, make sure the whole thing is dry. You don't wanna be resting your hand on wet paint. If you're confident enough, you can go ahead and write directly on your paper. If not, you can get a pencil and lightly, very lightly sketch it. You don't want those pencil lines showing at the end of your work. And you don't have to write straight. And then now we're missing the word with. So what you can do is you add like some simple banner here on the middle and you write the word with. If you have other brush pen colors, you can get them as well and add little accents. So this is where your pinky finger will come in very handy, like a tripod. So make sure you put it in an area where there's no glittering and you write. And that's it. This is now your completed floral watercolor wreath with some simple calligraphy. You can actually explore more about watercolor and calligraphy and come up with your own design. You can come up with designs like this, or maybe something like this. The sky really is the limit when it comes to your creativity. I hope you have enjoyed this little activity and ignited a passion for watercolor as well as calligraphy. Thank you so much for watching. See ya!